Ladies and gentlemen, let me start with a question. When a narcissist hurts you, what they show on the surface often looks like confidence, indifference, or even superiority, but beneath that performance is something far less stable. One of the core realities they work tirelessly to hide is a profound fear of exposure. Not exposure in a legal or dramatic sense, but psychological exposure, the terror of being seen accurately. Narcissistic patterns are built around a carefully constructed false self, a version of identity designed to avoid shame at all costs. When someone is hurt by them and begins to question the behavior, that false self is threatened. Your pain becomes dangerous not because it moves them emotionally, but because it points to something they cannot tolerate: accountability. To acknowledge that they caused harm would require them to confront inadequacy, vulnerability, and limitation. For someone with narcissistic traits, those experiences are not simply uncomfortable, they feel annihilating. So instead, you may see deflection, blame shifting, minimization, or silence. These are not signs of strength, they are psychological, evasive maneuvers. Philosophically, this is about identity protection. The narcissist is not defending the relationship. They are defending the story they tell themselves about who they are. And when you ask for clarity, repair, or empathy, it threatens to collapse that story. This is why they often rewrite events, deny obvious harm, or position themselves as the victim. Reality itself becomes something they must control. Understanding this matters because it reframes the experience. Their refusal to engage is not evidence that your pain was insignificant. It is evidence that your clarity is powerful. And here's the critical takeaway. When someone fears being seen more than they value being ethical, the most self-respecting response is to see clearly and step back. Another reality that often goes unseen after a narcissist has hurt you is the emotional emptiness they are desperately trying to outrun. While you may be sitting with grief, confusion, or self-doubt, the narcissist is usually doing the opposite, staying in motion. This constant movement is not confidence, it is avoidance. At the core of many narcissistic patterns is a profound discomfort with inner experience. Stillness invites self-awareness, and self-awareness invites questions they are not equipped to answer. Psychologically, this emptiness comes from a lack of a stable, integrated sense of self. Rather than drawing meaning from values, connection, or reflection, the narcissist relies on external input: attention, admiration, conflict, or novelty to feel real. This is why they may appear to move on so quickly, seek new relationships immediately, or immerse themselves in status, work, or drama. These behaviors are not about joy or fulfillment, they are about numbing. Silence is threatening because it exposes the void. Philosophically, this speaks to the difference between having an inner life and performing an identity. You are processing pain because you can tolerate complexity. They are escaping because complexity destabilizes them. Emotional depth requires the capacity to sit with discomfort and extract meaning from it. Narcissistic functioning prioritizes relief over growth, sensation over insight. This understanding is crucial for healing because it dismantles a common illusion that they are fine and you are falling apart. In reality, your pain is a sign of emotional presence. Their avoidance is a sign of emotional absence. You are doing the harder work and the more honest work. Here is the reflection to hold on to. The ability to sit with emptiness is what eventually fills a life with meaning. If someone must constantly run to feel alive, you are not losing them. You are outgrowing them. A third truth that is often misunderstood after a narcissist has caused harm is the fragility beneath what looks like an unshakable ego. From the outside, their dismissal of your feelings can feel cold, even cruel, but what you are often witnessing is not strength, it is a defensive posture. Narcissistic grandiosity exists precisely because the inner structure is unstable. The louder the self-assurance, the more precarious the foundation underneath. Psychologically, this fragility comes from an ego that never fully consolidated. Instead of developing a resilient sense of self through secure attachment and honest feedback, the narcissist learned to rely on inflation and denial. Criticism, boundaries, or expressions of hurt don't register as information, they register as attacks. Your pain becomes interpreted as a threat to their identity rather than a call for repair. And so empathy is shut down, not because they don't hear you, but because hearing you would destabilize them. This is where indifference becomes performative, minimizing your experience, mocking your sensitivity, or acting as though Nothing happens serves one purpose: ego preservation. Acknowledging your hurt would require tolerating shame, and shame is something they are structurally unequipped to metabolize. Instead, they externalize it, often leaving you to carry the emotional weight they refuse to hold. Philosophically, this speaks to the difference between confidence and coherence. True confidence allows room for fault, for reflection, for growth. Fragile ego requires constant reinforcement and cannot survive scrutiny. That is why your emotional honesty feels dangerous to them. The key realization for you is this: when someone must invalidate your reality to protect their self-image, their fragility is not yours to manage. Strength does not silence pain, it learns from it. And choosing distance from fragility disguised as power is an act of self-respect. Of the most painful realizations after being hurt by a narcissist is recognizing how limited their capacity for genuine repair truly is. Many people wait, hoping for an apology that shows understanding, remorse, and change. But with narcissistic patterns, an apology is often performative or entirely absent, because real repair requires something fundamental: empathy that is not self-referential. And that is where the system breaks down. Psychologically, repair demands the ability to hold another person's emotional experience without immediately redirecting attention back to the self. It requires tolerating guilt without collapsing into shame, and responsibility without turning it into self-defense. For someone with narcissistic traits, guilt is quickly experienced as humiliation. Rather than feeling "I hurt you," the internal experience becomes "I am being exposed as flawed." That shift is critical because it transforms accountability into a threat. This is why apologies, when they happen, often come with conditions, explanations, or reversals. You may hear phrases that sound reflective, but subtly center their discomfort. "I'm sorry you feel that way," or "I wouldn't have done that if you hadn't." These are not bridges back to connection. They are strategies to escape vulnerability while appearing reasonable. True repair would require them to sit with your pain without controlling the narrative, and that level of emotional surrender is rarely accessible. Philosophically, repair is an ethical act. It acknowledges that another person's inner world matters independently of one's own self-image. Narcissistic functioning prioritizes image over ethics, self-protection over relational truth. The insight that liberates many people is this: closure does not come from their apology. It comes from your clarity. When someone cannot meet you in repair, the most honest response is not to wait, but to grieve the limitation and choose yourself. Another dynamic that often unfolds quietly after a narcissist has hurt you is their growing awareness that they are losing control over you. Control, in this context, doesn't always mean overt dominance. It can look like emotional influence, narrative authority, or the ability to predict and manage your reactions. When you are seeking answers, reassurance, or validation, there is a kind of psychological leverage. But when you begin to step back, something shifts. Psychologically, narcissistic relationships are often organized around regulation. The narcissist uses other people to stabilize their inner world, drawing energy from attention, compliance, or emotional reactions. When you stop engaging in familiar ways, when you no longer argue, explain, chase, or try to be understood, you are no longer serving that regulatory function. This loss can feel destabilizing to them, even if they never name it. This is why you may see sudden attempts to reassert influence. They may reach out unexpectedly, rewrite history, provoke a reaction, or present a softened version of themselves. These behaviors are not always about reconciliation. They are often about reestablishing relevance. Being ignored or emotionally disengaged can feel like erasure to someone who depends on external validation to maintain a sense of self. Philosophically, this moment marks a shift from being inside their psychological orbit to stepping outside it. You move from reacting to choosing, from being managed to being self-directed. That transition can feel uncomfortable because it requires tolerating uncertainty rather than clinging to familiar dynamics, even painful ones. What matters here is recognizing that your healing is not passive. It actively disrupts a system that relied on your emotional availability without reciprocity. And that disruption is not cruel, it is necessary. The reflection to carry forward is simple but powerful. When your silence and boundaries feel threatening to someone, it is often because they can no longer control the story. And reclaiming authorship of your life is one of the most decisive acts of freedom. At the core of all of this, perhaps the most important truth the narcissist works hardest to hide, is this: you were never the problem. After harm occurs, many people turn inward, analyzing their words, their tone, their needs, their reactions. This self-examination can become relentless, especially when the narcissist subtly or overtly assigns blame. Over time, you may begin to confuse your emotional responsiveness with defectiveness, but that confusion serves a purpose. It keeps the focus off the real issue. Psychologically, narcissistic dynamics rely on inversion. Responsibility is shifted away from the person who caused harm and placed onto the person who felt it. Your sensitivity is framed as excess, your boundaries as hostility, your need for clarity as drama. This reframing is powerful because it exploits your capacity for reflection. You are willing to ask, what could I have done differently? They are not asking the same question. Philosophically, this speaks to a deeper distinction between self-awareness and self-blame. Self-awareness leads to growth, self-blame leads to erasure. Narcissistic systems depend on the latter. They function best when you doubt your perceptions, minimize your needs, and overfunction emotionally to compensate for someone else's deficits. Your pain in this context is not evidence of weakness. It is evidence of moral and emotional engagement. This realization is often the turning point in healing. When you stop trying to earn understanding from someone incapable of mutuality, your energy returns to you. You begin to trust your internal signals again. And that trust is not arrogance, it is psychological alignment. So here's what to carry with you. The fact that you can reflect, feel, and heal is not a liability. It is your strength. The moment you stop treating your humanity as the problem is the moment your recovery truly begins. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to like and subscribe, my friends.